The small village of Odina buzzed with whispers that morning. The market women stopped selling. The blacksmith paused his hammer, and even the children ran to see the commotion at the town square. A wedding was about to take place, but not one of joy. At the center of the square stood a young dark-skinned woman, named Chioma, barely in her 20s, her eyes red from crying. Her simple white gown looked worn and plain, the veil trembling in her hands. Beside her, an elderly man held her shoulder firmly. Her uncle, the one who arranged this marriage. Before her stood a man everyone mocked, Obi, the village poor man. His clothes were clean but old, his slippers worn thin, and his dark brown skin glistened with nervous sweat under the scorching sun. People whispered cruelly from the crowd. How can a beautiful girl like Chioma marry that man? He doesn't even have a bicycle. Her family must be cursed. The priest cleared his throat and began the vows, but Chioma couldn't look up. Her heart pounded painfully in her chest. She thought of the life she dreamed of, school, travel, freedom, all slipping away with each word of the ceremony. When it came time to say "I do," she hesitated. Her uncle hissed under his breath, gripping her arm tightly. "Say it," he whispered. "This is your fate. You have no choice." Chioma swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "I do." Obi looked at her, not with pride, but with a deep sadness, as if he knew what it felt like to be unwanted. His own "I do" came out softly, almost in pain. As the villagers clapped half-heartedly, Chioma's eyes filled with tears. The women whispered, the men laughed, and the children pointed. But amid the noise, Obi turned to her and said quietly, "Don't worry. Today may look small, but tomorrow may surprise everyone." His words made her look up a first time, and in his eyes she saw something strange. Not fear, not shame, but quiet power. The sun shone brighter just then, as if the heavens were watching. No one knew that the man they mocked today was hiding a truth that would shake the entire village and change Chioma's life forever. The days after the wedding were nothing like Chioma had imagined a marriage would be. Gone were the songs, the smiles, and the dreams of freedom. The tiny mud house she now called home sat at the edge of the village, surrounded by dry land, no electricity, and a leaky roof that cried whenever it rained. Each morning, she rose before dawn, her dark brown skin glistening with sweat as she fetched water from the stream. Her once delicate hands were now rough from scrubbing and cooking over a smoky fire. She wore the same faded wrapper every day, and her soft eyes, once full of youth, carried the quiet sorrow of someone who had learned to endure. Obi, her husband, was no better in the eyes of the villagers. They mocked him daily as he walked through the dusty roads, selling small baskets he made by hand. Children ran after him, shouting, "Poor Obi, poor Obi!" But he never responded. He smiled quietly, bowed his head, and kept walking. Chioma often wondered why he never fought back. "Why don't you get angry when they insult you?" she asked one night, as they sat outside under the stars, eating plain Gary with no sugar. Obi looked up at the sky, his deep voice calm. "Because people who laugh at dust don't know it can turn into gold when the rain falls." She stared at him, confused. "You always talk in riddles," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "Maybe, but one day you'll understand." Life grew harder. There were nights they slept without food, and days when Chioma wanted to run back to her uncle's house. But every time she tried to leave, Obi would stop her, not with force, but with kindness. He would gently hand her a small wildflower or a handful of roasted corn and say, "Don't give up on today. Tomorrow may surprise you." And little by little, she began to notice things. Obi was never truly desperate. He never borrowed, never begged. Sometimes, he disappeared into forest for hours and returned with calm confidence, as though he had everything he needed hidden inside his heart. One day, while cleaning the small room where he kept his baskets, Chioma accidentally kicked over an old wooden box beneath his bed. The lid broke slightly, and something shiny glimmered inside. She froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Inside the box was a golden wristwatch, far too expensive for any poor man in the village. She reached for it with trembling hands. Beneath it, she found a small key and a folded piece of paper with embossed letters. Before she could open it, Obi entered the room quietly. His voice, calm yet firm, filled the air. "Some doors," he said slowly, "are not open until the time is right." Chioma dropped the paper instantly, her heart racing. What are you hiding from me?" Obi looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. "The truth," he said. "But truth is like fire. It burns before it shines." He turned away, leaving her frozen in silence. That night, as she lay awake beside him, listening to the crickets outside, one question echoed in her mind. Who exactly is the man I married? She didn't know it yet, but the answer to that question would one day turn her entire world upside down. Weeks passed, and life in the small village continued as quietly as the morning wind. Chioma's days were filled with routine, washing, cooking, tending to the small garden behind their hut, but her heart was no longer at peace. Every time she looked at Obi, something deep within her whispered, "He's not who he says he is." One evening, after a heavy rain, Chioma was outside spreading their wet clothes under the fading sunlight when she noticed Obi walking out of the forest again, the same path he always took at odd hours. But this time, something was different. He wasn't carrying baskets or firewood. Instead, he had a phone in his hand, a sleek, expensive one that no poor man in the village could afford. She ducked behind a tree and watched. Obi stopped near the edge of the riverbank, pressed the phone to his ear, and spoke in fluent English, his tone sharp, confident, and nothing like the humble tone she knew. "Yes. Transfer the funds to the rural development account," he said firmly. "No one should know where it came from. Make sure the school project begins by next week." Chioma's jaw dropped. Her heart pounded. She covered her mouth to keep from gasping. Funds? Project? What was happening? When Obi finished the call, he placed the phone back into his pocket and stared out over the river, his expression heavy, not with guilt, but with sorrow. Then he took off his slippers and stepped into the cool water, as if washing away the weight of the world. That night, Chioma pretended to sleep. She waited until she heard his steady breathing, before quietly slipping out of bed. The curiosity was too strong to fight. She went straight to the wooden box under his bed again. This time, she opened it fully. Inside were more shocking things. Neatly stacked bundles of money wrapped in foreign currency, documents bearing a gold seal, and photos of Obi wearing a designer suit, standing beside men in fine clothing at what looked like a business event in Lagos. Her eyes widened. Her hands trembled. Obi rich? It didn't make sense. Why would a wealthy man hide in poverty, living like a common villager? Suddenly, she heard a sound behind her. Obi stood in the doorway, the dim lantern light reflecting off his dark, calm eyes. His voice was quiet, too quiet. "I told you," he said slowly. "Some doors should not be opened too soon." Chioma's voice cracked. Why are you living like this? Who are you really?" He sighed deeply and stepped closer. "Once upon a time," he began, "I was a man who thought money could buy peace. I built companies, drove cars that touched the clouds, and lived in a mansion of glass. But one day I lost everything, not because I was poor, but because I was empty." He knelt down beside her, picking up one of the photos. "I came here to find peace, not power, and maybe to find someone who would love me for who I am, not what I own." Chioma's tears fell silently. The truth felt too heavy, too strange to believe. "So, all this time, you were testing me?" she whispered. Obi smiled sadly. "Not testing, searching. The world is full of people who only see gold, not hearts. But you, Chioma, you stayed, even when there was nothing to stay for." He stood up and reached for her hand. "Now you know my truth. What you do with it, that's up to you." Before she could respond, he walked out into the cool night air, leaving her staring after him. The rain had started again, light and soft. For the first time, Chioma looked around the small hut and saw not poverty, but mystery. She didn't understand everything yet. But deep inside, she knew one thing for sure. Her life was about to change in ways she could never imagine. The next morning came quietly, but the peace in Chioma's heart had vanished. She moved about the small hut with trembling hands, her mind heavy with everything she had seen and heard. The sound of the rooster crowing outside felt distant. Even the familiar aroma of boiling yam on the fire could not calm her thoughts. Obi sat outside under the mango tree, sharpening a hoe like every other morning. He looked the same, calm, humble, dressed in his usual brown shirt and worn trousers. But now Chioma saw through it all. His silence wasn't poverty. It was disguise. She stepped outside and stared at him for a long moment before asking softly, "Why didn't you tell me who you are?" Obi didn't look up. "Would you have believed me?" he asked. His voice was calm, but behind it was pain. Chioma sighed. "You made me believe we were the same, that we both had nothing." He smiled faintly. "We are the same. Chioma, we both lost something greater than wealth. Trust." Before she could respond, the sound of a car engine roared from the dirt road, leading to the village. It was so unusual that even the children playing nearby stopped. A black SUV stopped in front of their compound, its windows tinted, the body shining under the sun. Villagers gathered instantly, whispering, "Who is that? Is it the government? Or a visitor from the city?" Two men in black suits stepped out, their dark skin gleaming in the heat. One opened the back door, and out stepped a woman dressed in a blue power suit, heels clicking against the red earth. She was tall, elegant, with a sharp gaze that silenced the murmurs. "Excuse me," she said, her voice firm. "Is this the home of Mr. Obinna Okafor?" Chioma froze. Obinna? That was Obi's full name. But how could this woman know him? Obi stood slowly, his face unreadable. "Yes," he said quietly. The woman smiled tightly. "Then you're the man I've been searching for. The board has been waiting for your signature for weeks. The company can't proceed with the new contract without you." The entire crowd gasped. Chioma stared, speechless. "Company? Contract?" she stammered. Obi's jaw tightened. "Not here," he said to the woman. "We'll talk later." But it was too late. The villagers had already begun whispering. "He's rich." All this time, he was living like one of us. Chioma's heart pounded as she stepped back from him. "You lied to me," she said, her voice shaking. "You let me beg for food while you had money hidden away." Obi turned toward her. "Chioma, please listen." "No," she cried. "You want to see if I could love a poor man. But what about my dignity? You made me live a lie." Tears filled her eyes. She turned and ran toward the small river that cut through the village, the same place he used to stand and make his calls. She collapsed at the bank, her sobs echoing in the wind. Minutes later, Obi found her there. He knelt beside her, his eyes wet. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. "I wanted to live a life without fear, to remember what being human felt like. You gave me that." She looked at him, her voice trembling. "And what about me? You gave me hope and then took it away." He took a deep breath. "Chioma, I came here to build something that would last. Not buildings, not money. Something real. I didn't want someone who loved Obinna, the billionaire. I wanted someone who could love Obi, the man who had nothing." "But you had everything," she said bitterly. "I had money," he whispered, "but no peace." They sat in silence, the sound of rushing water filling the space between them. The sky darkened, heavy with clouds, as if nature itself mourned their pain. Finally, Obi stood. "You deserve to know everything," he said softly. "Tomorrow, I'll take you to where it all began." Chioma looked up, her face streaked with tears. "And after that," he paused, "after that, you decide if you ever want to see me again." He turned and walked away slowly, his figure fading into the misty path leading back to their home. That night, Chioma couldn't sleep. She kept seeing flashes of his face, hearing his words. A part of her wanted to hate him. Another part, the part that still loved him, wanted to believe him. As thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, she whispered to herself, "Maybe tomorrow will tell me who he truly is." But deep down, she already knew tomorrow would change everything. The morning broke softly over the horizon, painting the sky above the village in shades of orange and gold. The smell of wet earth hung in the air after a brief night rain. Birds chirped on the rooftops, unaware that something life-changing was about to happen for Chioma and everyone around her. By the time she stepped outside, the village was already buzzing. A convoy of black SUVs snaked its way down the dusty road, drawing a crowd of murmuring villagers. Curious faces peered from behind trees and huts. Children ran barefoot after the cars, shouting, "Rich people, big people don como." Chioma stood frozen at the gate of her small compound, her heart pounding in her chest. And then she saw him, Obi, or rather, Obinna Okafor, stepping out of the lead SUV. He wasn't dressed in his usual brown shirt and slippers anymore. He wore a crisp navy blue suit, a white shirt underneath, and dark shades that reflected the curious crowd. Even his posture had changed, confident, commanding, like the powerful man she had only heard about in rumors. Behind him stood men in black suits, all dark-skinned, holding folders and speaking into small radios. Cameras from news reporters began to flash. Chioma's knees went weak. So it was all true. She took a step back as the same woman from the previous day, the one in the blue power suit, approached her with a polite smile. "Madam," she said gently, "the chairman would like to see you." Chioma could barely speak. She looked down at her simple wrapper, her old sandals and her trembling hands. Everything about her screamed ordinary, while everything about him screamed worlds apart. She followed them toward the open field just beyond the village center. There, under a large white canopy, tables and chairs had been set up. On a long table at the front were files, laptops, and microphones. A big banner hung behind it, the Okafor Foundation, empowering rural women. The crowd gathered quickly. Farmers, traders, elders, and children filled the open space, whispering in awe. Nobody had ever seen so many cars or important-looking people in one place. Obinna, now the billionaire everyone was talking about, stood at the podium. He removed his sunglasses, revealing eyes that were tired but soft, the same eyes Chioma once saw every evening by the fire. He began to speak. "I was born not far from here," he said slowly. "This soil raised me. These people, you shaped me. But when I found wealth, I forgot where I came from. I forgot humility. I forgot love." The crowd fell silent. He turned toward Chioma, who stood a few feet away, still clutching her wrapper nervously. "When I came back to this village," he continued, "I didn't come as a billionaire. I came as a man searching for peace. And I found it in a woman who had nothing, yet gave me everything." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Chioma's heart began to race. He was looking right at her now, his eyes full of emotion. "This woman," he said, voice breaking slightly, "fed me when she barely had food herself. She gave me a home when I had no name. And I betrayed her trust because I was afraid she would see my weakness, afraid she would love the poor man more than the rich one I pretended to be." The crowd murmured softly. A few of the elders nodded in quiet understanding. Chioma felt tears sting her eyes. For weeks, she had wanted him to say something, to tell the truth. Now, he was doing it in front of everyone. "I hid who I was because I wanted to learn if love still existed in a world built on wealth," he said, his deep voice steady again. "And I learned that true love doesn't care about status or fortune. It lives in kindness. It breathes in humility." He paused, then motioned toward her. "Chioma, please come forward." The crowd parted as she stepped closer, trembling. Her bare feet brushed against the wet earth. When she reached the stage, he looked at her with a soft smile. "You once told me," he said gently, "love is not when two rich people come together, but when one person's heart can feed another soul." "You were right." Her lips trembled. "Then why did you lie to me?" He nodded, guilt shadowing his face. "Because I was broken. I wanted to test love, but in doing so, I tested your heart, unfairly. And yet you never failed me." Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, "You hurt me deeply, Obinna." "I know," he said, "and I'll spend the rest of my life making it right." He turned toward the reporters and crowd. "From today," he declared, "Chioma will head this new foundation, built in her honor. It will provide education, health care, and housing for women in rural areas. Every success of mine will carry her name." The applause that followed was thunderous. Children clapped, elders cheered, and women wiped tears from their eyes. Chioma's body shook with emotion. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. Obinna smiled. You deserve more than I could ever give." The woman in the blue suit stepped forward and handed Chioma a file, the official papers of the foundation. Her hands shook as she accepted them. Then, to everyone's surprise, Obina knelt down before her. The billionaire, the man the world admired, knelt on the same earth he once pretended to be poor on. "Chioma," he said softly, "forgive me." Gasps echoed across the field. She stepped back, her tears falling freely. "Get up," she said gently. "I forgave you the moment I realized love can't live with pride." He looked up at her, relief washing over his face. The crowd erupted into applause again, louder this time. The moment felt timeless. Two souls reunited not by wealth, but by humility and truth. The wind carried the sound of drums and distant singing from the villagers. Children danced, women ululated, and even the reporters lowered their cameras, moved by what they had witnessed. As the sky turned orange again with the setting sun, Obina stood beside Chioma, their hands clasped. "This time," he whispered, "I won't hide who I am. The world will know your name." She smiled faintly. "Then let the world also know that love doesn't need riches, only truth." And as the drums beat on, the village that once pitted Chioma now celebrated her, the woman who turned pain into power and taught a billionaire what love truly meant. Months passed after the day the village witnessed what they would later call the kneeling of the billionaire. Life slowly returned to rhythm, but nothing felt the same again. The story of Chioma and Obina had spread beyond their small community, from radio stations in Lagos to newspaper headlines across the country. Everyone wanted to hear how a poor orphan girl changed the heart of one of Africa's wealthiest men. The once dusty village now buzzed with new life. Roads were tarred, boreholes installed, and a modern hospital was built, all funded by the Chioma Foundation. Children ran to school wearing new uniforms with "Hope Begins Here" stitched in gold thread. Farmers received new tools, and widows who had once begged for food now earned income through small businesses. But through all the progress, Chioma remained the same. She still rose at dawn to help sweep the compound and still visited the old market women who once pitted her. Her hair, usually wrapped in a bright ochre scarf, framed her glowing dark skin, now radiant not with wealth but peace. One morning, she sat under a mango tree near the edge of the village, watching the sunrise with Obina. He was dressed simply in a white caftan, his once stern face now relaxed, his eyes soft with gratitude. "You could live anywhere now," he said quietly, glancing at her. "Yet you stay here." She smiled gently. "Because this soil remembers me," she replied. "It remembers my mother, my pain, my prayers. You don't abandon the place that built your faith." He nodded slowly. "I used to think wealth was found in cities, in towers, in banks. But now, I know true wealth is peace." They both fell silent, listening to the distant laughter of children playing near the school built in her name. Later that week, Obina gathered everyone in the courtyard of the foundation. Rows of chairs filled the yard, workers, villagers, and guests from across Nigeria. Cameras flashed, and microphones lined the front table. Obina stood to speak, his deep voice steady and warm. "A year ago, I made the greatest mistake of my life, judging someone by what they lacked, instead of seeing what they carried inside." He turned to Chioma, who sat beside him in a flowing white dress that shimmered in the sunlight. "This woman taught me that love is not a transaction. It's transformation. She showed me that a person with nothing can still give more than gold." The crowd murmured softly, many nodding in agreement. Chioma stood next, her voice calm but filled with emotion. "If you ever find yourself mocked or looked down upon," she said, "remember this. Your worth is not in who accepts you, but in who you choose to remain when the world rejects you. I was once called a burden, an orphan, a mistake. But pain became my teacher and grace became my name." The entire courtyard erupted in applause. Some people wept openly. Others clapped with hands lifted high. A little girl in a school uniform ran up to Chioma, handing her a small flower. "Thank you, Auntie," she said shyly. "My mama says we have food again because of you." Chioma knelt, smiling through tears. "No, my dear," she said softly, "because of us." That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Chioma and Obina stood outside the new hospital. The golden light bathed their faces as the sign above the gate came into full view. The Chioma Grace Memorial Hospital, built on love. He turned to her quietly. "Do you forgive me for everything?" She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "I forgave you the moment you knelt, not because you're rich, but because you finally understood what humility means." He nodded, emotion filling his chest. "And I'll never forget it." The camera would have caught them standing there, the billionaire and the orphan, two people from different worlds, united by something stronger than pride, stronger than wealth, truth. As the night sky opened with stars, the voices of villagers singing drifted through the air. Children danced around the fire. Women clapped in rhythm, and laughter echoed through the village. For the first time in a long time, Chioma felt whole. She looked at Obina and whispered, "Wealth fades, beauty fades, but good hearts build empires that never die." He smiled back. "Then together we'll keep building." And as the music played softly into the night, their silhouettes faded under the golden glow, a reminder that even the poorest soul can change the world when guided by love and humility. Sparkle's moral of the story: never look down on anyone because of where they are today. Life has a way of lifting the humble and humbling the proud. True wealth is not in possessions, but in compassion.